Tom Mulcair, first of all, good to see you again.
Good to see you,
Thanks
Peter.
for coming in to see me. How do you feel about facing the delegates in Edmonton?
Well, you know, it's part of who we are in the NDP. Every single convention, the members get to vote on whether or not we're going to have a leadership race. No different this time around. It is after a disappointing election result, and I've already made very clear to the members that I assume full responsibility for that. That's why I went across the country and met thousands of members over the past 6 months since that election. I'm heartened by what I'm hearing. I'm not taking anything for granted, but I am looking forward to seeing the membership in Edmonton on the weekend.
Everybody talks about this support number. 70% is kind of the bar that's been thrown out there. What does 70% mean to you?
Well, it means it's the number that people have talked about, and that's fine. I mean, you know, because you've followed this for a long time, what our party is about. What we say at these conventions is you have to have a membership vote in favor of a leadership race, so that's where it starts. But beyond that, it's up to the members to express it, and I will react to the number I'm given. But as I say, Peter, I've met with hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to be there on the weekend, and I'm not taking anything for granted, but I am glad of what I'm seeing in terms of support.
Will you stay on if you get less than 70%?
Well, don't forget, it's up to the members to express that, and I'm not going to decide that in advance for them.
No, but you must have a number in your head that says...
I have a number in my heart, and I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going, but the real answer to that is I'm not going to give a number to you or to anyone else for one good and simple reason. I don't want to prejudice it, because if it came just above or just below somebody's number, and a lot of different people have given different numbers, I don't want that to be the thing we're concentrating on. What I'm concentrating on is making sure that we come out of that convention with a clear vision for the future, a clear plan for what we have to do. That's what I'm working towards.
Fair enough to say you have a level of support in your head and your heart that will cause you to react one way or the other, but you don't want to talk about that today.
No, I don't want to set up an artificial discussion about a specific number, because again, if it comes within that range, then you want to be able to take into account a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to be respectful of the membership. I'm going to let them express themselves over the weekend. I hope to get a really strong endorsement at this convention, because I know that there are a lot of numbers that do keep me up at night, like the 1.4 million Canadians who are out of work, or the million Canadian kids who go to school hungry every day. That's the type of number that I'm worried about.
So it sounds like what you're saying is when you talk about a range, so if you're talking about something below 70% but close.
No, you're the one who evoked 70%, and what I can see.
Well, the number's out there, but you said if it's, I don't want to set something out there if it's in a range.
That's what I said, is the type of number that I've heard.
Yeah.
But if I were to set artificially a specific number, that one or another one, and then it came within a point or two on either side, then I'm removing the ability to assess the whole situation, and I don't want to remove that ability. I want to let the membership express themselves. I'll be respectful of that process, and I'm going to listen to what they say.
So to be clear, 70% is a range. It's not a hard number.
70% is a number that some people have talked about. It's the type of number I've heard across the country. But you know what, Peter? I've heard a whole bunch of other numbers. And what I'm going to do is try to get the strongest endorsement I can over the weekend.
Let's talk about what you think you're required to do for these delegates when you get there in terms of this whole situation. As you know, there have been some high-profile supporters and some high-profile critics of your leadership. Let's talk about Peggy Nash. She's come out saying the national campaign was a spectacular letdown in this letter that is in the Huffington Post. But let me just quickly, for our viewers, capture a bit of what she said. Many have commented on the failure of the leader to answer questions on the opening day of the campaign, the failure to debate unless the PM was present, and generally the failure to inspire Canadians. I agree. I hope he, Tom Mulcair, throws away talking points and speaks from the heart. I hope he shows us the passion that was so lacking in the federal campaign, and that he inspires us with a vision of a better Canada and a plan to rebuild. Canada needs the NDP to build a truly progressive, sustainable, inclusive, and fair Canada. The NDP urgently needs the leader who can get us there. What will you tell Peggy Nash and the rest of those convention delegates who may have doubts about your leadership?
When Peggy describes that type of failing, it's exactly what Rebecca Blakey described after a very formal process of unvarnished meetings across the country. It's what I heard that the general campaign here out of Ottawa tried to impose on regions, whether it's Toronto or Saskatchewan. I mean, we were trying to come up with a model and impose it in different areas, and we didn't adapt enough. And that's the #1 conclusion I've come to. So even if I'm very proud of the work that we've done in Parliament, the parliamentary wing solid, respected, the party apparatus itself has to be better connected to the base, which is the local riding associations. And I could have written a lot of what Peggy said there in terms of the failings of the campaign, but I hope to be able to keep Peggy very close. She's won for us before, and I'd love to have her back. She's a strong MP. She was doing an amazing job here in Ottawa. I certainly hope that the people of Parkdale High Park can get her back.
What do you think she means when she wants you to speak from the heart?
I think that the description of the failings with regard to communications is very difficult to contest. I am responsible for any decision, including whether or not to take questions on the launch of the campaign. But of course, and if there was someone giving me that advice, I'm still responsible for having that person there to give me that advice and for accepting it. So those are the types of things that Rebecca heard, those are the types of things that I heard, and you know what? I'm not disputing it. I respect every member's ability to assess the campaign, every member's right to come to their own conclusions. I would hope to be able to have every single one of them, but it wouldn't be a real exercise if it were unanimous. And you know what, Peter? We're a political party. Right. We're a movement. We're not a cult. I mean, you know, it's not going to be unanimous, but that's okay too. That shows that there's still room for growth and things to improve on. And I receive very openly that type of critique, and I don't shy away from it. And there's a challenge in there. It says, come to Edmonton. Inspire us, and you know what? I plan to do just that.
Well, that was my next question. She talks about the NDP urgently needs the leader who can get us there. You believe you're that leader?
Well, I know that I have fought for the same types of things that the party has fought for many years. 10 years ago, Jack came to me and said, why don't you come and help me try to build the NDP in Quebec? We had never won a single seat in a federal general election. Very proud to have just been elected for the 4th time for the NDP in Quebec. But you know what? Even though the result was disappointing, we have 16 MPs across the province. And that's a real change for us because now we can look at Canadians as a national party. So we've got to get back in places like downtown Toronto. We've got to get back in Atlantic Canada. Quebec City is another place where we fell well short. But we've got 44 members of Parliament. We're going to do a great job holding the government to account, and we're going to do the types of things we're doing on the weekend, building our proposals for the future.
You got support from some big unions, but the head of the CLC, Hassan Yousaf, says basically you took a winnable campaign and blew it, and that you have to go. And I know you've got some union supporters on side. What's your reaction to him? And in the context of, it's my assessment that over a number of years the NDP has tried to move away from that tightness with some of the labor unions. Is it back if you need the support of these big unions to help you keep your leadership?
Well, there are two different things in play here. You described the CLC, which is essentially an umbrella group for those unions, but those unions individually, I would sit down recently here in Ottawa with the Canadian Union of Public Employees. So there was nothing predetermined there. Nobody was making a direct order from the top down. I sat there with them, took their questions, answered for an hour and a half. They went ahead and discussed it amongst themselves, and I got their unanimous support. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our tradition of being the only party that fights for workers' rights in Canada, and we're going to continue doing that. So I have the support of many unions representing millions of workers across Canada, and it's a little bit like your previous question. Yeah. Hassan is a member of the party, and I totally respect his opinion, and I would hope that when we go forward, Peter, with our big bill that I'm sure you're going to talk about on your show, to bring in federal anti-scab legislation, I hope that Hassan Yousaf will be standing beside me as we campaign together to force the Liberals to vote for our anti-scab legislation.
Let me ask you this. What's motivating you to stay on in the face of some of this relatively pointed criticism, which I know you acknowledge? I mean, I think some people would say, look, fine, if I don't have your complete confidence, goodbye, find somebody else. Is there that voice inside Tom Mulcair saying?
That would certainly have been a lot easier, but the person I am is the person who's always fought for the types of things that the NDP has always stood for. Since I was a teenager, I've been involved in social justice issues. As I was heading into politics, I was still sitting on the boards of numerous charities, from the Montreal Oral School for the Deaf to the St. Patrick's Society. It's who I've always been. So I know that when I get up in the morning, there are big challenges out there. This is a more unequal society than it's ever been. 30 years of constant economic growth, 50% growth in the economy, none of that's gone to the workers. They're having trouble getting by in the average family. Jobs that are being created are part-time. They're precarious, low-paid jobs. We wanted to bring in a federal minimum wage at $15 an hour. That's a living wage at the very least, and nobody working their full 40 hours a week should live in poverty. So that's who we are, Peter. We know that the big issues like climate change are still waiting to be addressed, and the NDP is the only party with a credible plan on these issues. And we're going to continue that fight. I enjoy doing this because all the easy stuff's already been done. I don't mind doing the hard stuff.
You've talked about a lot of stuff that will come before the convention floor delegates in terms of resolutions, all these issues you've talked about that are sort of bread and butter NDP issues. Almost at a time. A lot of people I've talked to have suggested, look, it's kind of a two-step phase in passing judgment on Tom Mulcair. We can afford to support him this time, give him 2 years because there's another convention 2018, and then review his leadership again. You okay with that? It's effectively a reprieve. And what do you do in the 2 years to change what you've done to this point to make them want to keep you in 2018?
Peter, we're the only political party in Canada that at every single convention has a vote on whether or not there will be a leadership race. And you know what?
I know, and every leader, I've spoken to all of you over the years, and everybody, it's a serious thing. Everybody frets about it because
I wouldn't have it any other way. How can a political party leader claim to represent their base if they don't go before that membership and get their support? So I'm proud to be heading to Edmonton. I'm proud to be soliciting that support. I intend to speak to the hearts and the minds of those members and make them understand that we do have the voice, we have the program, we have the plan that connects with the Canadians across the country and their needs.
Let me ask you this. So what is the plan? Let's say you get 2 years to reinvigorate the NDP, bring a different vision. Maybe I'm going to get to the LEAP manifesto to finish here, but what do you see as the path to returning the NDP to sort of key players in the game here? Is it bold new vision over the next 2 years, or is it waiting for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals to start to fade with the public?
Well, Peter, with 44 members of Parliament, we are key players in the game here on the Hill, and with the strength of that caucus, we are leading the type of fight. We're the only progressive opposition. Don't expect the Liberals or the Conservatives to do anything but vote in favor of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but I know it'll kill tens of thousands of good-paying Canadian jobs. We're the only ones asking those tough questions on these many issues. The Conservatives cut door-to-door mail delivery. The Liberals promised to bring it back. Only the NDP is going to hold their feet to the fire on that. So whether it's on big issues like democratic reform and proportional representation, or the day-to-day things like getting back your door-to-door mail delivery, it's the NDP that's going to be leading those fights. But that's half the battle. The other half is to continue to connect with Canadians and let them know that there is that strong, experienced voice that is the NDP that can do the types of things that they'd like to see have done to make this a more fair society.
Let me finish on this. The LEAP manifesto. It's going to be one of the key things being discussed at the convention. Would move the party to the left, and without going into too much detail, abandoning fossil fuels, taking care of income, racial, gender inequality in the country, no trade deals that hurt local economies. Do you support the LEAP manifesto? And if that's where the party's headed, are you the leader to take it there?
Well, the LEAP manifesto came out right in the middle of the federal campaign. It would have been great if we had had a chance to see a little bit more before. I think we would have been able to have a more fulsome discussion. We're the only party that has the courage to bring something like the LEAP manifesto there. Avi Lewis will be there with us, and he's done an amazing job pushing these big ideas. And I'll put it to you this way,
Do you support
Peter.
the ideas?
Canada has been bluffing about reducing greenhouse gases for 20 years. Going back to the previous Liberal government, we had one of the worst records in the world. The only way to deal with climate change is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I, for one, am very tired of having a Canada that continues to talk a good game on climate change but does nothing. I welcome the change of tone from the new government, frankly, but again, we're still stuck with Stephen Harper's timelines, his targets, and his plan. So what we've got to do is start coming up with a plan that complements what Rachel Notley's extraordinary NDP government has come up with in Alberta. And their plan is to start bending the curve for the first time, but we've got to complete it now. It's Canada that signed that deal, and we've got to have a plan to meet those targets.
Do you support the LEAP manifesto?
I'm looking forward to participating in that debate. The members are going to decide what we do with it, and as leader, I'll make sure I follow through on the will of the party members to the extent that I can.
Tom Mulcair, always a pleasure to talk to you. You've been generous with your time. I know you got to run, and we'll see you on the floor in Edmonton.
Looking forward to it, Peter.